Welcome to the Sens Spotlight podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer available in Ontario. Must be 18 plus. Please play responsibly. And before we get started, just so for the listeners, please hit like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast as well. YouTube now has a new hype button, so please hit that as well if you're enjoying the show, like I hope you are. On today's show, we have another podcaster, Brandon Pillar of the Locked On Sens podcast. It should be a fun podcast. I've known Brandon for a while. He's a great guy. I'm sure many Sens fans know Brandon. So it should be fun kind of talking shop and talking some Sens. So hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, burst of speed, gets a shot away, score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are welcomed on the show by Brandon. Before we get started, how much fun was it just to finally see the Sens make the playoffs last year? Like, what was that roller coaster like? Because I know you've been, a diehard for a long time, and with your show, Locked On Senators.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time coming, Alex. We started the Locked On Senators podcast in November 2019. So those were some long years. I think I forget the exact number, but we ended up doing over 1,000 episodes without any playoff games. So it was refreshing to have our coverage of the team go beyond April. We got one May game, so we made it to May. Hopefully sometime soon we can make it to June, but that's maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves. But yeah, it was an absolute blast to cover the Sens in the playoffs, especially the Sens got the matchup that most Sens fans wanted up against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Battle of Ontario. So there wasn't a dull moment, that's for sure.
I guess for you, because the Battle of Ontario, we're of a similar kind of era. I don't really remember the kind of early 2000s battle. Did the sting of losing to the Leafs have that same weight as you thought it would, or was it a bit different just because they finally jumped into the playoffs? They played, hard. It wasn't like an underwhelming performance. Obviously, they would have wanted to win, but did it hit the same way that you thought it would, or was it a bit better than you thought?
No, it was pretty much what I expected. As Sens fans, we are very used to Toronto Maple Leafs fans and the attention that they get in sports media, and obviously Toronto, the big market. We get it. Leafs fans flood the CTC, unfortunately, whenever they're there. But it was a great series. I know Leafs fans will say, "Oh, well, we rolled over the Sens. We were up 3-0 on them." But I mean, games in overtime were close. Ends up being a 6-game series. The Ottawa Senators had a chance to pull away in that game 6 when David Perron scores that late goal. So it was closer than I think Leafs fans are willing to admit. But still, it's a tough loss, and they still have the Ottawa Senators number in the playoffs. So yes, it did sting, but not as much as I would think. And I think maybe that was a bit of just finally we're in the playoffs and we won a couple playoff games. We pushed back. So that was a great first step. But this season, the complacency and just being like, oh, it's great to be here in the playoffs, that kind of attitude is not going to rest well. And I think Brady Tkachuk has really kind of set that precedent that, okay, we got our playoffs. We got the jitters out of the way. All of us young guys, we got to experience it. Now we've got higher expectations.
And it's interesting. I think Ian Mendes was the first one that kind of said this, was the Sens lost to the Leafs at home and they were cheered off with a roundy, with the standing ovation. You don't expect that, but I think you touch it. The point there is that it was kind of, I wouldn't say Cinderella season, but close to that, right? They finally broke through. Been a lot of pain and finally some gain and finally some fun, right? And finally the team turning the other corner. And I think you're right about this season, where it's going to be interesting because they will have some expectations to make the playoffs. If they just make it and lose in 5 to Toronto, which would be awful, or whoever, people aren't. It's not going to be the same vibe that we have right now at training camp that starts, later today as we record this. Like the players, the management, like Steve Stais is laughing all the time with reporters. I don't know what's changed. I think it's maybe a little bit of a pep in his step for making the playoffs. I don't know if that's going to be the case in a year from now, or maybe it will be, because I am pretty high on this team. And I guess, what do you think the expectations should be for this team heading into this season?
I mean, I think expectations are you got to win round one. I know maybe some Sens fans have higher expectations for that, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with being confident and hopeful in your team, but the Atlantic Division alone is just absolutely stacked. Like, you got, like, the Stanley Cup runs through the state of Florida. I think, pretty sure the last 5 Stanley Cups have had either the Florida Panthers or the Tampa Bay Lightning in it. Florida Panthers are back-to-back champs and were in the Stanley Cup Finals the year before that and lost. So if you're going to go farther than round one, you're likely going to have to play one of those 2 Florida teams in the second round or first round. So it's not going to be easy, but I think just getting to the playoffs and giving a team a hard time in round one is not going to cut it. That's not what the team and the players expect. And I think the fans have higher expectations than that as well. So let's get that round one victory here.
And I also think, like, the Atlantic for so many years was a gauntlet. You had Boston, you had Tampa Bay, you had the Leafs, obviously a perennial regular season team. But I look at the Atlantic, and outside of Florida, I think Montreal's a bit better, and I think they're going to be a really exciting team. But I don't think they're, going to win a cup or anything in the next year or two. Like, they're still a pretty young team. You look at Tampa; they're another year older. They're a really old team. The Leafs obviously lost Marner, and I don't think Dakota Joshua and Matthias Michelli are going to make up for that, right? So I think outside of Florida, like, Ottawa's the best team in this division, in my opinion. Now, they have to play the games, and I think, they need goaltending. We'll see what Jordan Spence is. Does he hit it off? Does Jake Sanderson turn into a Norris Trophy guy, or does he kind of maybe take a step back? Like, it is a pretty young roster, but I do feel like their division is actually kind of open for the taking outside of Florida, where I think if they played them in the first, second, third, whatever, I don't love their chances.
Yeah, you don't want to be matched up against Florida. That's a tough one for sure. I don't know if I'm that high on the Sens, Alex. I wish I could say I was, but I kind of, honestly, I don't really care where they finish in the regular season. Because,
Sure.
keep in mind, sure, they were a wild card team, but they were very close to taking that 3rd spot from the Florida Panthers in the Atlantic Division. But I don't see a world where the Ottawa Senators jump either of the Florida teams, Florida and Tampa. I think Toronto, although losing Marner is a big hit, I think they're still going to find a way to sneak into that top 3. So I got the Sens as the top wild card spot in the East again, but you play who you play in the playoffs. Like, for me, I don't think, unless you're like a real top seed and have the expectations to have home ice advantage all the way through the playoffs, I don't think where you finish is that big of a deal. And, like, look at the Florida Panthers. Like, they could care less where they finish. The Florida Panthers could finish 1 point into making the playoffs as a second wildcard team, and they wouldn't care. Nobody would care. They would have the same expectations and the same potential in the playoffs as if they won the President's Trophy. So I think for the Ottawa Senators, just get in, try to get in healthy. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, and build off the experience you got from last playoffs.
I guess for you, and maybe the reason why I'm high on this team is, like, you look at, they're really young. You look at Tim Stützle, Dylan Cozens, Brady Tkachuk just turned 26. Like, they're basically all under that age. And it felt like the past couple of years, they really didn't know how to win, right? And Travis Green came in. He's like, okay, we're going to teach everyone how to play defensive principled hockey. And guess what? It worked. Maybe they took a little bit back on the offensive side of the puck, but I think overall they've learned to win. And I think, from basically December on, they're top 10 record in the league, right? And that's with Travis Hamonic playing. Now you have Jordan Spence, who's markedly better. Maybe Ullmark's a bit better. He has that Team USA, Team Sweden, job that he's trying to make for the Olympics. Like, you look at Tim Stützle, I think he can be better offensively. Jake Sanderson could take another step. Like, I see a lot of easy ways where they can become 10, 15% better this year. And I look at Tampa's, I look at the Floridas, in a sense, the Leafs losing Marner. I find it harder to see that kind of natural progression. I think Montreal is that other team in that group with the Sens that you can see Demidov and whoever hitting it where they can become better. But that's, I think, why I'm high, and I'm just curious what you think of that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Montreal, they're building something really good over there. It pains me to say it, but they've done a really good
I
job
know.
drafting and developing guys. Demidov is going to be a problem. I don't think they're quite ready to take that next step yet, but they've got the pieces that with time, if those guys all pan out the way they expect, they can be a real good team. But I think for now, Ottawa still has the edge on them. But I think really, Alex, where I see this team taking a big step from last year to this year is the fact that Fabian Zetterland and Dylan Cozens will have been here for a full, well, they'll have been here from the start of training camp moving forward. They've both got longer contracts. They both have a better understanding of what their roles are. The coaching staff will have a better idea of where to put them than they did. I mean, Dylan Cozens was a pretty easy transition. He essentially went from being the Sabres second line center to being the Ottawa Senators second line center. So that wasn't that bad. But Fabian Zetterlund really bounced around. He spent too much time on the fourth line. Then when Brady was out, he got time on the top line with Timmy. But I think those guys, now that they're comfortable and acclimated, they're going to be the ones that take the big steps. Dylan Cozens has more to give. He had over 30 goals, over 30 assists 1 year with the Sabres. I think he can get back to that. Fabian Zetterlund scored 24 goals with the Sharks before. He was underwhelming as far as point producing goes with the Ottawa Senators. He can surely improve on that. So that's where I really see the big jump for the Sens, is those guys coming in and making the impact that they were brought in to do, when it was a little bit difficult for them to do that coming in at the trade deadline, and kind of how hectic everything was. So that's where I see the Sens elevating their game. And then you mentioned it, I think Tim Stützle can improve offensively. He knows he's got to shoot the puck more. I mean, 39 goals. He had 39 goals the 1 year. So let's get back to that play from Timmy. Jake Sanderson started off not good last season.
No.
It was a rough start for Sanderson, but then in the second half of the season, he went back to the Sanderson we know and love. So if he can play consistently all year, that's going to be a big bump. And then Brady Tkachuk, for pretty much the first time in his career, got injured, and he wasn't available for every single game. So if he's healthy for all 82, everyone knows what he brings to this team, not only on the ice, but off the ice as well. And then you've got a coaching staff that's more comfortable here. You've got veteran guys coming back. Claude Giroux's back. That's great to see. So I really think that the Ottawa Senators have a chance to improve, but where they don't have that next step, Alex, I guess to answer your question in a long-winded way, is they don't have that playoff experience that the Tampas, that the Floridas, and I mean, we like to joke on them, the Leafs, but they make the playoffs every year. So those guys do have much more playoff experience than the Ottawa Senators do as well. So that's where they're going to have to build on that. And I don't think it's going to be a quick, hey, we got 6 playoff games. Now we know everything there is to know about postseason.
Sure.
Now we're going to go all the way kind of thing. Right. So I think that's where they still have a little bit more time to grow, and that's fine. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
The thing that I think about this team is, and people have talked about, you guys have talked on your show, like they're probably missing another 1 or 2 like game breakers in their lineup. You're probably missing another top, right winger. We'll see where Zetterland plays, and if he plays with Timmy on the right, although he likes to play on the left, even though he's a natural right-handed shooter. So in my opinion, like you look up and down the lineup, their center depth is top 3-4 in the league. You have Timmy, Cozens, Pinto, obviously Lars Eller is coming in. I really like him as a fourth line center. You obviously have Ridley Gregg, Michael Amadio, who can play center in a pinch. And so I see like their forward group as really deep. And to me, almost in the regular season, I think they're built for, if Stützle goes down for, God forbid, or I'm knocking on wood as we speak, goes down a couple games, you have Shane Pinto that you can put in the number 2. Cozens, like, I don't think that, unless it's, hopefully not carnage in terms of injuries, I think they'll be able to withstand a couple of injuries here and there, unlike some other teams like Tampa Bay that's very top heavy, the Leafs as well, although they're a bit deeper. But I think in the playoffs, I'm actually a bit lower on them because I don't feel they have that game breaking talent that, Toronto has, that Tampa Bay has, obviously Florida has. So that's almost my differentiator. I'm curious for you, like you mentioned a couple guys, like where do you think Fabian Zetterland fits in this mix? Because I think Travis Green is going to have a lot of tough and interesting decisions as to who he is putting on the wing at certain spots in this lineup.
Well, I'll start with where I know he doesn't fit. There is absolutely no excuse for Fabian Zetterlund to spend a single second on the fourth line. And when he came over in the trade deadline, I'll give the coaching staff some grace. They didn't know how to use him. He came over quick. They were trying to find ways to fit him in that made sense. So I think he just got started there by default. But I could see an argument for all three other lines. Personally, I've got him on that top right wing with Brady and Timmy. You needed a guy that could score goals, that will shoot the puck to play with Tim Stützle. Fabian Zetterlund is that guy. Obviously, the Sens have confidence in him. They already gave him a contract extension. I think his play was actually very good. He just didn't get the points to support that. But if you want to get him on the second line, you mentioned it. He's a right shot that can play the left wing, right? Is it the other way around? I know.
No, you got it right. You got it right. Yeah.
Okay, nice. I sometimes mix up the shots. He's a right shot that can play the left wing, kind of that Russian sniper type player.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no issue getting him on that second line. Fabian Zetterlund, Dylan Cozens, Drake Batherson, rather. That could be a nice second line. Or if maybe you want to run back the top six that you had last year, let's say Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Claude Giroux, David Perron, Dylan Cozens, Drake Batherson, and then you get Fabian Zetterlund on that third line with Ridley Gregg, Shane Pinto, and then Zetterlund on the right side to add a little bit of an offensive punch to a line that was typically a shutdown checking third line. I don't mind that either. So as long as he is not on the fourth line for a single second, I shouldn't say happy. I could see arguments why he fits in on either one of the other three lines.
I feel like for Travis Green, he basically has 10 players with 9 spots, and there's going to be an odd man out, right? And a lot of people talked about Michael Amadio because he is maybe like, I don't want to call him low skill, but he's on the lower end of that compared to like a Perron or Zetterland, where you don't want Michael Amadio in your top 6 necessarily, but you're more than happy to have him on your fourth line. You feel like, oh my God, we have Michael Amadio on our fourth line. We're a pretty good team, right? And I just am very curious to see how Travis Green goes about it, because David Perron, Dylan Cozens, and Drake Batherson played pretty well in the playoffs. Zetterland kind of lost out, but Giroux's played really well with Timmy and Brady in the past and in the playoffs. So I feel like I just don't know where he's going to land. And the one thing I do like about Travis Green is he's not afraid to move things around. But I think they really need Zetterland to hit as like a 25, maybe 30, maybe not that high, but in that vicinity, like 20 to 30 goals for this team to take a jump. I think if he's kind of plateaus and maybe gets snake bitten like he was at the end of last season, I think the Sens are in a bit of a problem in terms of just goal scoring, which they struggled at times last year.
Yeah, I mean, Fabian Zetterland and Dylan Cozens were brought in. The key stat and area of the game the Ottawa Senators targeted at the trade deadline was 5-on-5 scoring. And both those guys had good analytics as far as that goes. And Dave Poulin told us about it when they did their deadline acquisitions, that was something they targeted. And that's why those guys were brought in here, because the Ottawa Senators simply were not scoring enough goals 5-on-5. Sure, the power play was clicking nicely, but you cannot rely on that. And especially in the playoffs, that's not a formula of success to just wait for penalties to get goals on the power play. So I think those guys are going to improve the overall even strength offense that this team has. And I think Claude Giroux in his later years, look, he still had 50 points last year. Let's not get down on him too much, but I think it'll make more sense for him to get a little less ice time and slide down the lineup and allow a younger, more dynamic player like Fabian Zetterlund to kind of take that role on that top line.
How much do you think of the Sens' lack of goal scoring last year was just like, if you look at the analytics, like they shouldn't have been that bad they should have been scoring more than they were. At the same time, they struggled. Do you feel it's, hey, we need guys, like, is it an issue of talent? Is it an issue of playing too defensively? Is it an issue of, hey, like, they're just, PDO'd, like you're just not scoring every shot? It felt like Fabian Zetterlund was like the perfect example of that, where it felt like every shot just hit a guy in front or hit the post, or like everything went, nothing could find the back of the net. Like, how do you see their issues offensively, and like how do you maybe outline where the issues are in that sense?
Well, I mean, they did have some injuries that affected their offense. Like we talked about, Brady Tkachuk, for the first time in his career, got hurt. That's a guy that usually is in the top 3, if not the leader in goal scoring. So that hurts right off the bat. David Prom was brought in to provide an offensive punch to the middle 6 of this lineup. He's typically good for 45 to 55 points. He only played a handful of games and wasn't able to produce offensively like the Senators had hoped. And I do think, like you mentioned, playing 2 defensively was a part of it. Now, Travis Green will tell you, like, look, I'm not telling our guys to just play defense and dump the puck in and wait and play defense again. Like, we want to have a balance of both. But this was a young team that, with DJ Smith, like, it was really, they didn't have the structure that they needed to be a successful, sustainable, long-term team. They were just kind of playing run and gun games and hoping to get some lucky bounces and hoping to win games like that. Whereas Travis Green is like, hey guys, enough of that. You had your time in the rebuild. You had your time developing young guys, and you had your excuses built in. That's not how we're going to play anymore. We're going to provide some structure to this game. We're going to play a better game defensively. And I think inherently that is going to affect how good you are offensively, because you're not going to be taking the same chances and risks that you were in the past. So I think now that players have bought into Travis Green's system, I mean, the way they played got them to the playoffs where they hadn't got before. So now they have a better understanding of what they need to do. And I think with Zetterland here, Timmy's going to shoot more, hopefully get some more health up front. I think they're going to be able to be much more successful 5-on-5 and putting the puck in the back of the net.
I'm super curious to see what Travis Green's like this year, because he's an interesting character, just being around him all the time. I know for a fact that coming into this season, he wants to maybe turn the heat up a little bit, the dial up for the offensive side of things. And how does he manage that for a team that became really good defensively? And a lot of guys like kind of had to learn how to play defense and maybe get out of those bad habits. But maybe some of those kind of offensive habits were the reason why they were scoring, a lot of goals, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see what he tries to do and implement to kind of make this team better at generating offense. And does he try to put Zetterland up on the top line, who's maybe not as good defensively, but is maybe a better scorer than at this day and age as Claude Giroux is, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what he does there. And I would love them to change the PK. I just never understood that formation last year, the kind of zonal diamond.
Yeah.
But that's more on the defensive side of things. I guess like transitioning a little bit to the defense, like we talked about a little bit, and I feel like I'm like on the biggest bandwagoner of Jake Sanderson, and I know you guys are as well at Locked On, but just being around him all the time, like he's so dedicated to his craft, so like locked on, locked in, however you want to say it. But I'm curious for you, like, do you feel like the last 3 months of his season, the playoffs, where he was top 3 in the points from defensemen, he had the breakout at the Four Nations, was the best defenseman in the Battle of Ontario. Do you feel like he can get better than that? And do you think he'll be like almost as good or better this season?
I think we haven't seen the best Jake Sanderson version yet, Alex. He's so young. He's got so much more time to grow. And I mean, classic fan overreactions in the offseason. But my God, if you've seen pictures of Jake Sanderson, this guy looks like an absolute beast this year. And it looks like he really bulked up, and that's going to help him because he's the number 1 defenseman on this team. He's given the toughest assignments. So he's going to need that size. We know he's got the skating. Now he's got the size and strength to match with it as well. He's got the playoff experience. I think if he can be consistent, last year at the start was very unusual for Jake Sanderson to struggle like that. So if he can be consistent, I think he's really going to grow. And look, I'm not about to proclaim that he's going to be a Norris Trophy winner, but I think we're getting to the era where he's going to be starting to at least be a consideration on these ballots. And it's not too crazy to see him get a good handful of votes and really climb up that leaderboard when we see the writers' reveal of how the votes went. So I'm a big Jake Sanderson guy. He's arguably the most important player on this team as he gets the most minutes. He plays top power play. He's likely going to be a top penalty killer again. He's up against the other team's top offensive opponents. So Jake Sanderson is a big factor for whether this team has success or doesn't.
It's funny. I remember interviewing him. It was in November, I think, of last season when he was struggling. And I asked him,
As the Ottawa Senators always do in November.
I know. See, that's another thing. Like, if they can get through November and they're like way above 500, I'm like, oh, they're gonna do crazy.
Alex, I'll take 500 in November. Let's not get too crazy. The Novembers have been an absolute disaster. So if they can just get through November, that's good.
Was it 8, 10, and 2? I need to go back and the first 20 games. Anyways,
I've erased all November stats from my mind, so I can't tell you.
I feel like the November's thing's gone unless they're, we won't even say it. We won't even say it.
Let's hope.
But
let's hope.
But talking to him, and I said, like, hey, like, do you ever think, like, what do you think about is winning a Norris Trophy something you think about? And he literally said, I don't think I'm going to get enough points. Right? Like, they give it to the guy with,
every year. What defenseman has the most points? Here's the Norris Trophy.
God love Erik Karlsson, but he had 100 points on a terrible San Jose team, and he won the Norris Trophy. And it's interesting because at the end of the season, the last 3 months, he was top 2, 3 in points by a defenseman. Like, if that offensive part of his game translates, and he starts to become in that 60, 70, maybe even 80 point echelon as a defenseman, like, because his defense, he has everything. He has the size, IQ, stick. Like, he's just such a great defenseman and defender. And if the offense comes, like, so I think seeing him develop that way, running a power play so well, like, I'm pretty high on him. And I think maybe not Norris Trophy itself, but I think he's going to be on way more ballots than he was last year. I almost put him on my ballot, but I felt like I was too much of a homer, and then I saw other people did, and I felt, okay, I didn't in the end, but I have a better reason to this year if Sanderson plays that way. Moving on a little bit, staying on the defense, like, what do you think of Jordan Spence, and where do you see him fitting in on the right side of the defense?
Yeah, I think Sens fans, and rightfully so, are very excited about the acquisition of Jordan Spence. I mean, let's just start there. They traded a 3rd and a 6th to get him, and both of those picks were acquired in trades. The 6th round pick for Kevin Mandolese years ago, and then that 3rd round pick was acquired when they moved back just 2 spots in the first round of the draft, and they still got their guy in Logan Hensler. So, like, basically extra expendable assets to get a guy that's a young defenseman, only 24 years old. He put up good points in LA. He was a plus 23. And I think he has a role to play on this team. I know a lot of people just see him as Nick Jensen insurance if Jensen isn't ready to go at the start of the season, like we all expect. But I think there's more to the story here. I think he's hungry for the opportunity. When we saw that video from LA's socials where they showed Ken Holland calling him when he was traded, saying, hey, look, you're not going to get the opportunities we feel you deserve here. So we decided to move you, and hopefully you get opportunities in Ottawa. And I think that's a possibility. We were talking about on our show that a pair of Clevin and Jordan Spence would be a really nice balance. You got Clevin, the physical shutdown guy, and then Spence, a guy that can be a little bit more offensive, and he can be expected to transition the puck up the ice better. So that's where I really see him fitting in. He's got $1.5 million 1 year, and then he's an RFA. So really nice team control, budget-friendly player. So I'm excited to see what he can do and where he fits in. I don't know if I love the idea of him playing with Chabot. Seems like too much of the same player. Yeah. And I'm really hoping that Nick Jensen's injury isn't that bad and he comes back around in at least mid-November, because really what Nick Jensen brought to this team, and not to take anything away from him, what he does individually, but he complemented and elevated Thomas Chabot's game, a role that Ottawa Senators had tried to bring many other right shot defensemen in and failed. So Nick Jensen, if he can be healthy and provide that same stability alongside Thomas Chabot, that's perfect. And then for me, Artem Zub with Jake Sanderson, put it in permanent marker. Don't mess with that. That's a great pair. So this Ottawa Senators decor is arguably the best they've been in years.
I do you ever look back at the 2017 decor and you're like, how did this team anyways, that's
One of my
just
favorite things to do, Alex, is over the years when I look at when the Sens post their roster, I have screenshots of when I'm just like, oh my god, this is a hilariously bad NHL team. So I've taken screenshots of those, and when they pop up on like my memories or whatever, sometimes I just look at it. I'm like,
ugh.
look how far we've come. No Travis Hamonic, no Josh Brown, no Nikita Zaitsev. Get these guys out of here. We need a proper competent defenseman, and the Ottawa Senators now have that. And then look, I don't want to put Nicholas Matimpalo down too bad either, because he was a pleasant surprise as a guy
He
that was
was.
brought in from Europe, and he really carved out a role for himself. The chemistry he had with Tyler Clevin in Belleville was brought into the NHL, and those two had great chemistry together as well. I think he's the perfect guy to be a seventh defenseman that you can plug and play
Yeah.
if injuries happen or if you just want to switch things up a little bit.
I'm just thinking, like, if Jensen is out, if he's out till mid-November, and hopefully he's on the training camp roster. I don't know. I wouldn't read too much into that, but let's say he misses the first 2-3 weeks, a month of the season. What is your D pairings? Because to me, as much as I love Sanderson and Zubin, I think they're great together. I think you're right about the fact that Shabbat and Spence really scare me. I just don't
Mhm.
think that's defensively. I mean, they're going to have the puck the whole time, but without the puck, I worry a little bit. Where do you think? What do you think should happen then? And I think maybe tangentially is Carter Yakemchuk. He's looking good. He's looking promising. Steos seems to be. We talked to him a week ago. He said, it's kind of up to Carter if he wants to make the team. Now, is that just general manager speak, which Steve Staios loves to do? But what do you think are the different permutations if Jensen misses the first little bit of the season?
Yeah, which is what we all expect and assume, unfortunately. I don't love doing this because I know I literally just said put in permanent marker Sanderson Zub. But if it happens, how I would do this is I would give Jordan Spence an opportunity to play with Jake Sanderson, because I think those two could work together. Because although Sanderson is the top point getter defenseman in Ottawa, he's very responsible defensively. And I think having two guys on your top pair that can transition the puck up the ice would be an asset. And then let's get Chabot and Zub back together. Those guys have decent experience together, and that's a nice pair of an offensive defensive defenseman. And then you get your comfortable, familiar third pair of Clevin and Matimpalo, two guys that played a bunch together in the past, whether it's AHL or NHL. And now, as far as Carter Yakemchuk goes, look, this guy has done an excellent job of making the decisions for the Ottawa Senators difficult. Even last year, I think if you would have polled Ottawa Senators fans, are you disappointed that Carter Yakemchuk was sent back to junior? A lot of them would have said yes after the great
Sure.
preseason he had, that highlight reel goal where he gets around Mitch Marner and tucks it in to beat the Leafs. He had a great goal up against Red Wings. Now, obviously, this is preseason, but for a young kid to be able to do that up against NHL players is pretty impressive. And now in the rookie tournament, again, the rookie tournament, but he excelled and he looked dominant like we all hoped and expected as well. But for me, I know fans don't love this approach. Pilsy preaching patience. I think it would be much more, and I was a fan. I thought it was the right decision to send him back to junior. I know it's the boring answer, but I think that was the right move. He worked on his game a little bit more all around, worked on the defense a little bit more. I was on a better Calgary Hitmen team than they were in the years past. He added 10 pounds of muscle. He talked about that. So he's trying to get ready for a pro game. There's no worry if he's going to be sent back to junior. That's not going to happen at all. It's either NHL or AHL this year. I think it would be responsible and a good move to have him at least start in Belleville. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I'll word it this way: play majority of his games in Belleville, because I wouldn't mind if Jensen is out. Give him some time while there's that spot open and see how it goes for a couple of games. But I think it would be really good for Carter Yakemchuk's development, which needs to be the key here. He's a young defenseman, and he is the Ottawa Senators' top prospect. So let's not rush this guy. Let's work him in the way he needs to work. Send him to Belleville, where he's going to be playing top pair minutes. He's going to be on the top power play, and he's going to adjust to playing a pro game up against men, where one of Carter Yakemchuk's top attributes is his physicality. So let's see if he can bring that along from junior to the AHL. And depending on how injuries go, depending on how the season goes, maybe you see him playing in the NHL more regularly. But for me, I'd like for him to get a good chunk of time in the AHL to really mature. And the Belleville Senators, that community needs an exciting prospect to help pull in season ticket holders and fill the CAA arena on a more nightly basis. So I think it would be good for everyone to have Carter Yakemchuk spend a decent amount of time in Belleville.
I'm pretty much on the same boat as you on that. I do think that if he plays like he did last season and Jensen presumably is out, I think if he's just like jumped out of cannon in preseason, played awesome hockey, I think you reward him by playing a couple games and see how he does. But I think as soon as he starts swimming, or starts sinking a little bit, send him to Belleville. There's no rush. And if he has a so-so camp, like, send him to Belleville. Like, Steve Staios has brought in so many right shot defensemen. Like, you have enough on that side. I just think if you feel as though he's playing well enough, I think you should reward him with that. If he's not, then as you mentioned, if he's kind of forcing the hand of the Sens, then the Sens should, be forced to play their hand. If not, then go to Belleville. But I do think he's probably another year away from being a full-time NHLer. But you never know. Like, it didn't seem as though Yakemchuk would burst onto the scene last preseason, and guess what? He did, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and I mean, the way he played in the rookie tournament, like, definitely a man amongst boys. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does. But I think you're right. Like, shout out to David Foote, who we both know, like, in Belleville. Like, Belleville needs some star power. It's been too long. So I think that'll be good for the organization just to build some grassroots and in Belleville if Yakemchuk goes down. I guess with that, transitioning to in net a little bit, how comfortable are you with Linus Ullmark right now heading into the season?
When he's healthy, fully comfortable. I mean, he's a former Vezina winning goalie. We saw him put this team on his back at times. He had a stretch where he was stealing wins for the Ottawa Senators, and they were playing him every single night, even in back-to-back games where there was travel involved. So I have full confidence in Linus Ullmark. Obviously, the Ottawa Senators do as well. He's already kicked into that extension where he's making over $8 million a year. And the Ottawa Senators have not had a true number one goalie since Craig Anderson left. And they desperately needed that. They got their guy. And I really think that if he can stay healthy, and honestly, he doesn't even need to be a Vezina caliber goalie. He just needs to be good. If he can be good and consistent, the rest of this roster can figure it out, and they can have success, in my opinion. And then you finally have a backup goalie that inspires confidence as well in Levi Meriläinen. Sure, he's young. Sure, his sample size in the NHL is small, but man, he was so good, and he really showed everyone what he can do. And any given night, if the Ottawa Senators are starting Linus Ullmark or Levi Meriläinen, I have confidence that they can get a win that night. So it's a good spot to be in. I really thought the Ottawa Senators might bring in a more stable backup guy just because we saw Linus Ullmark with the back injury, and he's 32 years old. It's possible that he could get hurt. And then if he's hurt, you're looking at a tandem of Levi Meriläinen and Mads Søgaard, or Levi Meriläinen and Hunter Shepard. That's not a position you want to be in. No offense to any of those guys. That's just beyond what their roles are expected to be. So that's where I get a little nervous. But if everything's good, health is good, the tandem of Linus Ullmark and Levi Meriläinen gives me a lot of faith. But I will say, I don't want Linus Ullmark playing 60, 65 games and Levi as a young goalie sitting on the bench for weeks at a time. You got to get this guy in games. I want it to be a closer kind of separate, or a split, I should say. Not quite a tandem where Linus is the 1A and Levy's the 1B. Not quite that much, but almost like a 65% of the games go to Linus and 35% of them, math guy, go to Levi Meriläinen. That's what I would like.
Mine's the 2 out of 3 rule, right? Which is essentially 65%. But
Yeah, there you go. I'll work with that.
There you go. Math guy. We're math
Yeah.
guys here on the show. I think you're completely right. Like that's my worry a little bit is his injury history. Like he's never played more than 49 games in a regular
No,
season.
that wasn't necessarily all due to injuries, Alex.
Sure.
He was involved in tandem style scenarios, especially in Boston with Jeremy Swayman, right? And they had success doing that. But now this is more of a, all right, Linus, you are our starter, and Levy, you are our backup. And that's what Linus Ullmark wanted. I think he was in a situation where he's like, look, I got a Vezina trophy, and I'm not even the number one goalie on my own team here. I want to be in a position where I know I'm the guy, and he is the guy in Ottawa.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to sleep too much on Meriläinen because,
No,
as you said, like he played so well in Belleville
amazing.
the past couple of years, and then he comes to the show and he's even better somehow.
Yeah.
He has 3 shutouts, was 925 in 12 games. Like that's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff. I do wonder how he kind of equips himself to playing more consistently against the best players. You know, it's a bit more of a shot in the pan when you come up for a couple games but I do think you're right. Like, if there's an injury to Ullmark specifically, who's had a bit of a track record, like I'm a bit surprised, honestly, that Steve Staios didn't come in and bring in like I'm trying to think of the third goalies that always play in Detroit. It seems like they always have 8 goalies there. But
I was thinking, like for me, I was targeting a guy like Alex Lyon to be a guy brought in. You could get him cheap. He's a guy that if you have to play him more than you expect, look, he's not an amazing goalie. He's not going to steal wins, but at least he's got experience and he knows what his role is. But he ended up signing a 2-year deal in Buffalo. I would not have wanted him on a 2-year deal. I was looking for a 1-year guy just to give Levy a little bit of grace if there was an injury. But I'm comfortable with how they did here because doing it the way they did allowed for more budget to be spent elsewhere.
I don't want to say I'm not sold on Linus, but like the playoffs did, you know, some doubt crept in. I didn't feel that he was that locked in. I thought Anthony Stolarz was by far the best goalie. I do think as the playoffs or as that series progressed, Ullmark definitely got more comfortable and played better. But you know, he hasn't played that well in the playoffs in the past.
Nope.
And I do think there's a scenario, and I'm not trying to, you know, it's not because I want it to happen, but my point of view is that if Meriläinen is the stud that he looks to be by the end of the season, by the end of next season, like we could have a bit of a goalie controversy on our hands. And I do think it's interesting the fact that Ullmark hasn't really played as a starter much, playing that like 55 game kind of benchmark. And, you know, he's kind of used to it. So I wonder if that almost plays into him playing better and them challenging each other. And obviously, you know, for the Senators' sake, they want both of those guys to be as good as possible. But I just wonder if maybe we see a scenario in the future that Meriläinen's kind of kicking at the door saying, hey, like, I'm pretty good too.
Yeah, and that could happen. For me, honestly, Alex, that scares me a little bit because it's almost like the old saying in football: if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one.
Sure.
You see scenarios, and this is what happened in Boston, where they were in playoff series, and one of the goalies, either Ullmark or Swayman, faltered, and immediately they're like, next guy, and then it kind of puts too much pressure, and it makes you nervous. You let in a bad goal, and you're like, well, I'm done, and then it's in your head. Whereas I really liked that this year they stuck with Linus, even though, I mean, look at game 1, they lost 6-2. They got absolutely embarrassed in their first ever playoff game. And it was, no, Linus is our guy. So for me personally, I would like to, at least this season, I would like for them to go into the playoffs being like, look, unless you're hurt or you're absolutely atrocious for consecutive games, we're going to keep you in. This is your net. You got to battle for it because that's what you wanted and that's what we're paying you to do. So I would like personally for them to basically be like, no matter what happens, again, unless there's an injury or consecutive bad starts, you're going to be our guy so that he's not looking over his shoulder. And if a bad goal goes in, he's not just deflated mentally with his confidence. But look, it's playoffs is what you're here to do, and there's not a lot of room for error. If the Ottawa Senators feel like Levy Meriläinen gives them a better chance of winning in the playoffs, every game is so crucial. You got to do what you think is best.
But it's interesting because in the NHL, there has been that tandem goalies. Like it's like goaltending's been much more voodoo. But if you look at the teams that win, like Bob has basically been the guy for 3 years. Although
Tampa.
Alex Lyon was the goalie to start 2023, which is an interesting little wrinkle. But
Yeah.
they basically played with him the whole time. And then you look at Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay, and then even Kemper in Colorado, like he was the starter. There was no question about him. The only time that it was a little bit of fray was in Vegas, but that Hill only came in because there was an injury to Pasquale. Like it wasn't even like a goalie battle of sorts. So, maybe it's good in the regular season, but in the playoffs, you want your guy. So I think you're right, Brandon, about that, is that you don't want a goalie controversy heading into the playoffs. But I do think, if Ullmark has, a terrible save percentage and Meriläinen's, amazing, at a certain point, the results speak for themselves. But I don't think we're going to be at that point next year, but it's going to be an interesting storyline to kind of follow. I'm curious for you. I've been asking a couple people on this show to have a little segue here, but about Brady Tkachuk, because you guys have interviewed him on your show numerous times, and it seems like, from the fan base, he's a very likable guy. He treats people super well. Being around him, you guys know him, like really good dude. But I look back in like the history of the fan base, and I can't think of anyone outside of Alfie that has had more love, like genuine love from the fan base. And I guess, what do you make of that, and how do you explain that?
Well, first off, I have nothing but great things to say about Brady Tkachuk as a player and as a person. He's been so good to us, coming on our show a couple times. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a few times as well. And the best way I can describe it is this guy just gets it. Born in a hockey family. Obviously, the Tkachuks are legendary with Big Walt and Matthew. He understands what he needs to do to be a professional and how he needs to be a leader. He's just so good off the ice. Him and his wife are doing great things with the Boys and Girls Club in Ottawa, being a big part of the community. And he's a guy that really drags his team into the battle on the ice. Like you can see when Brady's frustrated, he's getting all the guys going. He doesn't do anything, or sorry, he doesn't expect anything of anyone else that he wouldn't do himself. He's blocking shots, he's hitting, he's fighting if he has to. Now, obviously, we'd like to get some of those fights down when you've got an $8 million player that you rely upon to score goals. You'd rather him not be in the penalty box with the other team's fourth line left winger as the trade-off. But he's got a better handle on when it's the right time to do it and when he needs to just say, shoot, like, get out of here. I'm not about to give you the time of day. So he's certainly improved on that. But Brady Tkachuk is the face of this franchise. And there's no better way to understand that than when he was having his contract dispute with the old regime, and he didn't start the season on time because they were still figuring it out. And I remember he came to the CTC and he wasn't even dressed. He was wearing.
I was at the game. I was at the game as a fan. I remember.
Yep. So was I. He was in a button-up shirt, and they put him in the spotlight in the arena, and he just started pumping his fist, and the Brady. Yeah. The chants, it gives me chills. Like he couldn't even believe it. He was looking at it. He was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." Or him in the playoffs after the game when Claire Han is interviewing him, and he's looking around and he's like, "I can't believe the atmosphere and the way that this city has really come alive, and the way that fans have stood by us through a lot of those tough years." So, like I mentioned, this is a guy that just gets it, and he's just such a good guy. He's so likable. I know maybe other fan bases don't like him, but that's fine. He is a great leader, and now that he's got one playoff experience under his belt, look, he's had to sit shotgun while Matthew Tkachuk goes to Stanley Cup final, wins a Stanley Cup, then repeats it. He wants a taste of that. Those two guys are some of the most competitive people in the world, especially when it's up against each other. So he doesn't want to just be the little brother that says, "Oh, I'm so proud of what Matthew's doing." He wants to be the guy that gets to drink out of the Stanley Cup as well and have Matthew attend his Stanley Cup party one day. So I think I'm so excited to see what Brady Tkachuk brings this season. He's situated in Ottawa. He's got a young family. Ryder Tkachuk shares the birthday with him, just turned 1 year old. So he's really got a good head on his shoulders, and he's the man.
What I really appreciate about Brady is just it's interesting being around him and talking about his competitiveness. And he's always talking about, we want to win the cup here.
Mm-hmm.
And in Ottawa, like, I remember he would say that maybe 2-3 years ago, and you're like, okay, like, come on. But now you see it, and like, they made the playoffs. I don't think they're winning the cup this year, but you can see a pathway for that happening. And I think you have to believe it. If it's going to happen, you have to believe it. And I really like that he does that. And you see him behind the scenes, like being at the rink, like he'll say hi to like the doorman, to little kids who come in, like
an example of that, Alex, is I went to a game in Calgary, and Ian Mendes was nice enough to let me join all you Big J journalists in the dressing rooms and things like that. And as soon as Brady saw me, he came over, said, "Hey, good to see you," dapped me up, said, have fun watching the game tonight. Like, it's little things like that for him, doesn't take a lot out of him to come say hi to me, but I just really appreciated that, because he saw me. We have respect for each other, and whenever I see him or we interview him, I feel like he's someone that has respect for everyone that he's around. Like you mentioned, the staff of the arenas, things like that. Like, Brady Tkachuk's trying to get ready for a game. He does not have to come up to me and say hello and have a quick chat. But it's little things like that he knows goes a long way.
They say don't meet your heroes, but I think for a lot of people, when they meet their hero and Brady Tkachuk, they like what the experience is. So, credit to him. And it's just great to see. Like, I think, that interview with Claire Hanna, where he just had that kind of kid-like jubilation and just excitement, like, whoa, like, this is so much fun. And I think that's why fans just love him, is that, I'm not calling him a kid by no means, but he brings that kind of youthful enthusiasm of playing in the NHL, big heart, good kid, great guy. And I think that's why he's so beloved. And it's just interesting to see like that evolution as now the team's becoming good, that, what's the let's Tkachuk and go sign that I drive by. I will probably drive by the next 20 minutes after this recording, going to the CTC. Like, it's just great to see the fan base rally around a player. And I don't think there's any other player that, should be rallied around, in a sense, in Ottawa. So it's exciting times. Brandon, before I let you go, is there anything, thanks again for doing it. Is there anything you want to plug for your podcast? Everyone should check it out, Locked On Sens, but I think they probably have already. But yeah, before I let you go.
Yeah, you can check out the Locked On Senators podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're now back up to 5 shows a week, Monday through Friday. You can expect an episode. We're doing Sens Central Citizens, which is where we invite a fan onto the show to tell us how they became a Sens fan, get some of their takes off, and just get to be a part of the Senators community, because that's why we started our show. We wanted to give Sens fans a voice and a platform to engage and to be excited about the Ottawa Senators. We're doing our organizational value rankings on the show right now, where we rank all 65 players in the organization. So if you want to learn about any player, go check out all those episodes and those segments there. And we're excited for the season to get going here. I mean, this is probably the most excitement and most faith and confidence that Ottawa Senators fans have had going into a season in a very long time. So let's just enjoy it.
I'm curious, just for you, does the fact that the team's good now, like, is everything rosy all of a sudden after years of gloom, like in your personal life? Like, is everything just like way better now that you actually see the team win some games after so much just torment?
Oh, it's certainly better, Alex. I mean, as a guy that's a diehard Sens fan, that I do this as a job Monday through Friday. And even when we do the postcast, sometimes we're doing 8 episodes a week. So the Ottawa Senators, the way they perform, does have a major impact on whether I'm happy, sad, or mad during the day. So I've had a lot more happier days recently. So it's nice.
We all want that in the world. We want more happiness. So, Brandon, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon, maybe when the Sens are kind of narrowing in on a playoff spot. So, Brandon, thanks so much.
Sounds good, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.